Welcome to Securing America with me, Frank Gaffney, the program that's a kind of owner's manual for protecting the country we love against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to the glory of God and his kingdom. Well, we have a very interesting tale to tell in this first block. It's about the problem that many of us are seized with, namely sex trafficking of children into and across America. It's a horrific story. Hundreds of thousands of children have gone missing, according to some of the government's own documentation. Many of them have been, it's feared, turned into essentially sexual slaves at the hands of cartels and others who are exploiting them mercilessly and, in many cases, murderously as well. A man who has been tracking this issue and a broader question of the illegal alien migration from Guatemala, where he resides, is our friend Steve Hecht, an American businessman who is, among other things, the editor-at-large at Impunity Observer and a contributor to BizPac Review. And we're very glad to catch up with him for updates on stories about what's going on in Guatemala and what our own government, specifically the Department of State, has been doing to, well, engage in and foster criminality there. Steve, it's good to have you. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you very much, Frank. It's great to be back with you again on Securing America.
Thank you. Let me start by just saying that last week, not one but two subcommittees of the House Homeland Security Committee convened to have joint hearings on this problem of the sexual trafficking of children. Talk a little bit about the hearing and how it relates to problems that you've been warning about for some time in Guatemala.
The hearing concentrated on child trafficking. There were four witnesses, and it was, I would say, an explosive hearing. Even the Democrats had to admit that this is a problem. Some of them attacked Trump and blamed him, but that's pretty absurd. And one of those witnesses, J.J. Carroll, who was a border agent for 24 years and then spent the last year after that investigating and writing about making documentaries, he said Biden, Harris, and Mayorkas intentionally, strategically, and purposely weaponized illegal immigration and used it as a tool to fundamentally transform America. Carroll called this treason.
Yeah. Fundamentally transform America is something that, of course, Barack Obama promised to do before his first election as president, no?
I imagine that's why J.J. Carroll used that word.
I imagine so as well. And the idea of accomplishing what he could not otherwise do through the formal mechanisms of our government, through this kind of criminal behavior, exploiting our open borders under Biden and so on, is, I think it's fair to say, treasonous.
Sure.
So, but what does it have to do with Guatemala, as you have witnessed it yourself?
Well, Tara Rodas, who testified last year before Congress and again last Tuesday, and did a podcast with me, which you can find on the Impunity Observer website or on the Impunity Observer's YouTube channel, said,
remind us who she is.
Tara Rodas was an HHS, Health and Human Services, whistleblower who filed a protected statement to the Justice Department and HHS Inspector Generals, and was fired a few weeks later and perp walked in front of all of her employees. So she was punished for telling the truth, which is the problem that you just identified. Is the truth is the enemy of totalitarians. Unfortunately, those are the people governing us today, which ends on January 20th.
Well, let's hope so. But again, this is a story that has some resonance with you because you're witnessing in Guatemala illegal alien migration into the United States, of course, on a grand scale. Is some of that tied to this sexploitation, if you will, of children?
Oh, definitely. When Tara uh, testified, and then she did an interview with Hill TV, she said that this problem begins in countries of origin. Now, the Department of Homeland Security Inspector General reported on August 19th 320,000 children were missing. J.J. Carroll says it's 550,000. But of those children that are missing, 85,000 of them for Guatemala. In other words, Guatemala has more of the missing children than any place else.
So
And
why is that? Are people in Guatemala selling their children into this, or they're being simply, absconded with, or what's happening at
I
the
suspect
Guatemala
it's
end?
a combination of all of that, and I'm sure that's going to be a theme for investigators, and that's what we need are investigations. We need U.S. investigations. But what's really important here is that Guatemala's Attorney General, Consuelo Porras, has been investigating this. She gets no help whatsoever from the U.S. government, which, of course, is no surprise, since the U.S. government is the one trafficking these children. According to
Oh,
Tarragonas, go
okay.
ahead.
Well, that you need to explicate. What do you mean the U.S. government is trafficking this? I mean, it's bad enough that we've lost 300 or maybe 500,000 of them, but what's the tie-in to government involvement here?
Well, the tie in is this that when the children arrive at the border, the Border Patrol turns them over to Health and Human Services. That's where Tara Rodas worked. And they have 2 weeks to connect those children with sponsors. And that's what got Tara Rodas into becoming a whistleblower when she saw that they were delivering them to traffickers. And she has said in the hearing last week and before that the United States government is a white glove operation. It takes the children and it delivers them to traffickers.
Wow. So you have evidence from this U.S. government employee that this is taking place. Um, I want to talk with you, particularly in the second block of our program, Steve, more about this attorney general. But um, what we're, I guess, confronting is evidence here and there that there is complicity on the part of not just Health and Human Services, but also the Department of State in the efforts to conceal what's going on here,
Of
the truth,
course,
as you put it.
yes,
So give us
because
the short course on what this Attorney General is up to and the resistance she's facing from our government.
yeah, the Department of State has to hide its crimes in Guatemala, which now they're vulnerable with the change of administration. I would imagine that it's very convenient. It would be helpful to the public of the United States for the Trump administration to expose all of this, and that's the last thing the State Department wants because not only is it affecting these children, but it's affecting everything else. The State Department policy in Guatemala was to impose criminal socialists. And we all know, and like J.J. Carroll said in a hearing, the promoting illegal immigration, open borders policy is part of the program of the Biden regime. It's really a Marxist construct. And and it's all purposeful, and the State Department was executing that. So all of this criminality that the State Department's been involved in is connected to that.
Steve, we've put a number of pieces of this on the table. Let's walk through this with some care to connect the proverbial dots. You've accused the State Department of criminality in Guatemala, including engineering the election of a well, a Marxist, I guess, a totalitarian there. That would hardly seem to be in the interests of the United States. What is the State Department's interest here?
Well, it's certainly not in the interests of the United States, but I don't think the Biden administration, Biden regime, I prefer to call it, or the State Department has the interests of the United States at heart. And if they do, then they are obstacles to liberty. The State Department, if we start talking about State Department crimes, we can stay on this call for a week without stopping. If we could stay up for a week, so let me summarize it this way: the most egregious crime the State Department has committed was directing an electoral fraud to put in their communist puppet as president of Guatemala last year. Now, one of the things.
Now, most communists are not generally puppets of
No,
the United States government. Why would this
no,
guy be?
that's for sure. And it was a pretty blatant fraud. And of course, they deny that. But they even had to admit it in Congress when Representative Warren Davidson asked Blinken, and a few weeks later asked his Assistant Secretary Brian Nichols, "Is it true that they were extorting Guatemalan members of Congress to vote for a law to remove the Attorney General?" They didn't deny it, which means that they admitted it. And then they tried to justify it by claiming that she and others were trying to undermine democracy. That is defined as denouncing and proving their fraud, which the Attorney General did prove under court orders. She delivered information on the fraud that proved the fraud to Guatemala's electoral authority. No action has been taken on that because the State Department is intimidating Guatemala's judiciary, its private sector, and numerous officials.
So, again, just to make sure I'm clear about this, you're saying that the State Department favors a communist that it helped get elected in Guatemala. It is trying to terminate the service of an elected attorney general in Guatemala, who is exposing, I guess, both what has been done by the Guatemalan leadership, but also our State Department. Is that correct?
Yes, the State Department and their puppet president in Guatemala have committed sedition to remove the Attorney General.
To the extent that she is still on the job and is still investigating and is still exposing evidence of criminal behavior, is it your understanding, Steve Hecht, that this patriotic Guatemalan official is now at risk of being deposed and otherwise sidelined so that her truth is not brought to light either there or here?
There is no legal way they can remove her. That's a long story, but they cannot remove her. Her term ends on May 14th, 2026, and they're desperate to remove her because she has prosecuted State Department agents criminality, what the State Department calls them warriors for justice.
So the bottom line of that would be the U.S. government is on the wrong side. If they persist in this, if they succeed in bringing somehow an end to this Attorney General's investigations and presumably her career, the effect would be to ensure a continuation of the flow of illegal
Yes,
immigrants and sex trafficking of children into this country, sir?
exactly.
So, what is it that you want, I guess most especially the Congress of the United States and presumably the Trump incoming administration to know and to do about all this?
I would advise them that obviously they're correct. Tom Homan has said that it's his one of his three top priorities to find the missing children. And it's pretty clear that Congress and the incoming Trump administration considers this a major issue. And of course, I agree with that. Any human being that has any morality at all should be disgusted and horrified by this trafficking of children. But if they follow this thread, it will lead them to the State Department, because the State Department's policies in the countries of origins, especially Guatemala, has contributed to the supply of children going to the United States. And the other thing that will happen is, if the government exposes the child trafficking tragedy, at the same time it exposes State Department criminality in Latin America, and starting in Guatemala, because that's where it's the easiest to show it, then that's going to discredit the State Department in a way that will make it very difficult for the establishment to use the State Department to get us, American people, into avoidable wars, which, of course, is one of the main things that Donald Trump has said he wants to avoid.
You know, Steve, this issue of the trafficking of children has, I think, touched a lot of Americans' souls, notably through the huge success of Sound of Freedom, a film that has chronicled some of what's going on here. Also, our friend James O'Keefe's new film, Line in the Sand, I think, develops this as a subtext of his treatment of the whole problem of illegal immigration into this country. But when you say these children are missing, what does that really mean? Is it that we can't find their exact whereabouts, or do we know that they have been turned over, in some cases directly by our government or NGOs working for it, to traffickers for sexploitation, or that they are otherwise condemned to a life of that kind of abuse and horror?
Well, it could mean all of that. Missing means that the government, HHS, theoretically doesn't know where they are. But as Tara Rodas has said on many occasions, including in her podcast with me, that HHS has the data. They have refused to release that data, even to state attorneys general, and to the Congress, of course. Congress has asked for it. Senator Grassley, Senator Johnson have asked for it.
Yeah, we're out of time. We need to follow up with them and with their investigators. We appreciate your calling attention to all of this doggedly at impunityobserver.com and at BizPac Review, and from time to time here on this program. I hope you come back to us with updates very soon. God bless you.